You must be the famous Pepper Potts.
Indeed I am.
After all these years, Tony still has you picking up the dry cleaning.
I do anything and everything that Mr. Sark requires, including occasionally taking out the trash. Will that be all?
Hello and welcome back to Stark Contrast, where we discuss the differences and similarities from Marvel Comics to their MCU counterparts. And we're your hosts, Geoffrey
and Dai.
Hello, and welcome back.
WB.
We are back.
We're back. Yeah. What's up, Jeff?
The same old, same old.
We're melting in California.
The heat has definitely kicked up here.
Yeah.
In LA.
Yep.
I was dying today. I'll say that. I stepped outside and I was like, I thought I was burning.
You're like, I'm melting.
Yeah. So I think I opened because I had to leave. I opened the garage when I was leaving, and the first thing out of my mouth, I was like, God, what the hell? I was like, ew.
Just imagine that every day. Climate change, baby.
That's why I stay inside.
Yeah. And also we gotta take care of the earth, y'all. Not to get all green on everybody, but you know.
Please. I'm like, wow, I miss when it was at 75.
I know.
It was gross.
And it was just 75 like the other day.
I know.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It could be worse because we don't have the humidity.
Yeah.
Like our friends on the east.
I'll take that. Humidity's even worse.
Right. Well, in lighter news, the Deadpool cameo list right off the top here, it's kind of insane. At one point, there were so many
That's
on Twitter and
that
threads.
It's getting authenticated by like legit sources.
I was like, wait a minute, are they real or are they messing with us? Like,
so weird.
I mean, like, full disclosure and spoiler alert, but like I saw like Gambit, and then I saw Professor X and Magneto, but like the OGs, not Fassbender yet. And McAvoy, yeah.
Those just got confirmed that they're not going to be.
Oh, they did.
Oh,
okay.
actually, from a known leaker. Yeah, he said like they're definitely not it.
I wanted Fassbender. Maybe I'll get Fassbender eventually, but I mean, like, when I saw
But
those
the fact
two,
that we know this information
I was
is
like,
kind of insane.
What? And then, of course, Elektra, who was joining Ben Affleck's Daredevil. And yeah, at one point, to maybe you and like 5 other people, I was like, yeah, I'm just waiting for Colin Farrell at this point. Just waiting.
I'm just so...
Bullseye.
How much, like, what's the budget for this?
I mean, at this point, also, I mean, they'll probably give him whatever he wants. But I think that he's also willing to just pony up his own money just to put.
I also think he has great
out.
relationships with these people.
I agree. I completely agree. Reynolds is insane, but in the best way. So yeah, and then they, of course, you know, just very recently released the unofficial official image of Hugh Jackman in a classic blue and yellow suit, which
Everyone's
is
excited.
20 years in the making, my friend. Like, legitimately, so many of my generation, quote unquote, are like, never thought we'd see the day.
Didn't realize like how many people were like,
I know.
finally.
You know who I'd really
like,
like to see though is James Marsden.
Oh my god. He's not out of the picture.
Yeah, I mean, they can't reveal everything. So, but you know, the list is growing and growing, and I hope they kind of pump the brakes because, like, you know, someone made a good point. We didn't know about cameos until after the movies came out before, and now we're a year ahead.
And like something I've noticed of like people just love now, like they want to know like the movie before they see the movie for some reason, like who's in it at least. I don't know, I feel like people, like, we become such a society of like the first to know
Immediacy,
and it's like God, like I remember going to a movie and like you're kind of like, what? Like
people still just want that little blurb and like that hit, and they're like, oh yeah, I want to know before everything else. I want to make my decision and decide yes or I hate it, which is what a lot of people do, which is unfortunate.
I mean, even like when I see like, and I mean, this is maybe my fault because I don't follow him, but he gets recommended to my feed a lot, especially on Twitter, because, you know, I interact with it because you know me, I'm still a curious cat, but I'm also kind of like, do I wish I read that? But I'm also kind of like, yeah, well, screw it. Like when I see the movie, because my thing is, no matter what I read or whatever, it's always gonna look different on the screen.
Sure.
But for what it's worth, maybe it does lose flair because maybe I do remember see it coming, and I'm like, okay, but but I'm also kind of like intrigued by it. I'm like, how do you get this source?
Oh, it always happens, right? It's part of the system. It's part of the biz. That
are you an industry plant?
They want to garner the interest or get feedback.
Yeah,
and related to the topic, it's not unlike them leaking that test footage for Deadpool. You
never know what's real, what's not.
Everyone was so fascinated and like enamored. They're like, it's so good, it can't be real. And then it was like, haha, we did it.
I mean, super side tangent because different universe. Like James Gunn's like Superman Legacy is. They're having Vanity Fair pieces on like who's getting casted as those official, and I'm like, damn, like why is that like a thing now? Like, I don't remember ever. Maybe actually, well, yeah, like when Chris Hemsworth was announced as Thor, but it's like that's like a thing now.
It's like that.
Like you need to find out like who's playing what.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Like you said, people just want to know. They want to get ahead of it, and it's just it's the whole cycle.
Sometimes I wish...
It's unavoidable now.
Yeah, sometimes I miss being just out of the loop.
Analog. And it's just the evolution, right? Of technology and the internet and everything.
There's just so much like info you have to take in. It's kind of overwhelming.
Yeah.
I literally had a moment this morning where, because the first thing I do in the morning, and this is probably horrible and the worst thing to do, check my phone. And then I was making my coffee, and I just felt overwhelmed. I was like, because there's so much information.
You tapped out already.
Like on top of like drinking my coffee.
Yeah.
I was just like overwhelmed with just information. Whether it was like complex, like a movie thing, a music thing, and I was like, oh my god.
Yeah.
Trailers being like, there's trailers like.
Yeah, they drop so early now. Yeah.
Like, oh my god, I gotta watch every. And I'm like. Whoa.
Yeah. I used to do that. I used to be the immediate phone person, and I was like, you know what? Can't do it. Because, I will get immediately tapped out, and I'll be like, man, now I got to do this for 9 more hours.
Yeah, because it's like if I don't.
For money.
Because if I don't, like, do it, it's hard for me to get out of bed. My alarm went off this morning, and I was like, damn. I don't want to get up right now.
No.
But I know if I close my eyes,
it's over.
I'm out of there, and I need to work.
Oh man, you got to get up and at 'em, friend.
I know.
In other news, so I saw Rogers.
That's right.
And people were asking for my review. And
let's hear it.
I don't think it's worth like a whole full-fledged episode, so I'll just mention it now. But yeah, it's fantastic. It's nothing like I expected it to be. It's definitely more than what we saw in Hawkeye, for instance. Like that song is clearly in the musical.
Yes.
It's so funny because it's exactly the same. The entire routine is exactly the same from soup to nuts. And so I thought it was going to be like a huge parody thing, but really it isn't. It's kind of taking a page out of the Aladdin musical if you have that context, right? Mm-hmm. And it's just taking all of the important moments in Steve Rogers' life and putting it in a musical form.
Wow, that's
it's
crazy.
It's very tasteful and very good. Like,
dang.
It's because on Hawkeye they portrayed it as like it was so cheesy and awful, but when you see this musical, it's
legit.
It's legit. I was like, I didn't think they could do it, and they did it, and it's quite marvelous. And I cry a few times. I've seen it twice, and I cried a few times because I don't know, something like I've said this before. Peggy Carter makes me cry. There's something about Peggy Carter, and she has like 2 songs in this musical.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and Bucky Barnes is in it. Like, there's all this contextualizing that they added. And then also extracted, because like how we were joking, like, oh, wouldn't it be funny if they put all the Avengers movies? They do, but in a sweeping suite that it kind of goes through it quick enough that you understand what's happening, but you don't need to see it replayed.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's really fantastic.
How long was it? Like 30
it's
minutes?
Only 30 minutes long, but it feels like it's so much longer in a good way.
Oh my gosh.
So definitely highly suggest it. There is a bit of tactic into getting into it if you want to have the full experience, and so I made a Twitter thread about it, But long story short, there's a VIP experience you can get. You got to be there just
Early.
as it opens. You have to be there before the rope drop, which is awful. It's a 7:30 call, and they sell out within 30 minutes.
7:30.
Yeah, and they sell it for the entire day in 30 minutes flat. And so if you want to do that, you can do that. They have a standby line. They have a virtual queue that opens at 10:30 every day. So depending on which route you take, it could be as simple or as difficult as you want. But it is a very good musical, and I think you will enjoy it a lot, Jeff, as a Cap fan. Yeah.
One day.
One day. And then we're nearly at the end of Secret Invasion. So we just passed the halfway mark, and episode 4 just newly streamed. So, it goes without saying, on our next episode, which happens to be Mini Marvel number 10, we're going to just talk all about the season finale. So the season in its entirety. We'll just recap the entire thing.
Yes.
I know that we've very freshly and almost unintentionally, did character studies on both Rhodey and Nick. But what a great way to kind of tie it all together by doing a Secret Invasion mini. So we'll talk about it all then, and whatever else pops up during San Diego Comic-Con next week, which is also
where
insane.
Dai will be.
I can't believe it's already next week. Yeah, but it's going to be very interesting scape because there will be no studios and we'll see what happens. But so the Marvel's Spider-Man, the Sony PlayStation game, does have a panel, so that's something.
Yeah.
I'll take it. And then in completely unrelated news, well, more or less, as Bucky Barnes here plays with his favorite ball like a maniac, we're officially on YouTube. So, we kind of bit the bullet. We're doing the automated thing where RSS is creating these cool videos for us just as we publish all of our episodes. So we're slowly rolling out our entire catalog on there. If you're more of a YouTube person, please go check it out and subscribe if you'd like, or give a few likes.
Play
on
it
some
in the background.
Yeah. So that's there for you. And same handle as everywhere else, STRKCNTRST, or just look up a stark contrast. It should show up. And also we're on Threads, as well as streaming on Pandora and Sirius XM.
If you guys use that sort of thing.
Yeah, if you're into that kind of stuff, we're all on all those platforms. So even more content to digest or under digest or over digest. So that said, I guess we can roll into our official episode. We're not experts. We don't claim to be. We're just a couple of nerds nerding out.
Yup.
And in this particular character study, we will be examining Virginia Pepper Potts, known to many from the Iron Man lore.
Woo!
So, let's get it going. Created by Stan Lee, Robert Bernstein, and Don Heck, Pep made her first appearance in Tales of Suspense number 45, cover dated September 1963.
Oh, wow.
So she has come a very long way. Jeff, do you remember how much the 1960s comics go for?
It's pretty early days.
Early days.
I want to go 12.
Ooh! 12 cents.
Yes!
You did
My
it.
time has arrived.
Back in the game, baby. And so this, again, Tales of Suspense is not unlike Strange Tales, where they kind of put several stories of different characters together in one issue. And so Iron Man and his newfound company take the helm with this issue. And so you can see on this cover, they're very much highlighted, the two of them. And it is Pepper and it is Happy Hogan, funny enough. And they're being attacked by this new adversary being introduced named Jack Frost.
That's
1963, baby. And so we'll discuss a little bit later, but it's so funny. I love the nostalgia, dude. This is why Silver Age is the best. So I scoured Shortbox there is no graded copy of this on that particular selling platform. So it's all eBay this time around. And so the highest I found on eBay was a CGC 7.0. And this is kind of a surprising price point for Pepper because I feel like, I mean, maybe it's because Happy Hogan also made his debut in this issue. So it's a twofer.
Okay.
But a 7.0 goes for about $2,500. And then the lowest, it's still a big chunk of change. The lowest I found was a CGC 4.5, and you can snag that for $200. So if you just want their first appearance, there it is. And then you can get a loose copy. It's not so great for about $75. You got to remember, 1963 is a long time ago.
If you still have stuff from 1963. I mean, God bless you, but oh my gosh.
Yeah, you're not only like basically 70, but yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's wild. So yeah, you can get a pretty decent copy, not great, for about $75. Yeah, and so it's as simple as that, really. First exposure? Is there any need to question that?
It's got to be.
It's got to be Iron Man, right?
Yeah, number one.
Yeah, I knew her, but not nearly to the degree that we're introduced to her, which of course is kind of like the story with a lot of these characters. They kind of emerge from the comics, even if they had like a tiny role initially.
Yeah,
and we're gonna get into a couple of those down here actually that we didn't originally explore in our Iron Man episode, which by the way is number 1. So
woo!
It's taken us 59 episodes to get to Pepper, but yeah, we're going to be revisiting some of those characters too, which is great because I know like Iron Man is clearly one of your faves, if not the fave.
Can I tell you my favorite Pepper Potts moment, or one of them?
Yeah.
I think it's first Avengers, where Phil Coulson comes up to the Stark Tower, and then she's like, Phil.
Yeah.
And his name's not Phil. His first name's Agent.
Yeah.
And then they go out to talk. Then they go away to talk, and they're like, "I thought we were having a moment. I was having 20% of the moment, 12% of the moment." And I was like, it's so good."
The 12% lives on. Right? Like every time anybody hears 12 or 12%,
12%.
we think of that. Yeah. Yeah, that's a fantastic moment. Yeah, and so while I have 3 digital cards of Pepper and her alias Rescue, none of them have character profiles in them, and I don't have any actual cards. So thankfully we have this new mini book to come to the rescue. And so her character overview says, longtime love of Tony Stark, Pepper Potts ascended from executive assistant to CEO of Stark Industries. Her close association with Iron Man led to injuries that forced Stark to save Pepper's life by melding her body to modified cybernetic Iron Man armor. Since then, she has continued to aid Iron Man as the Armored Rescue. So, a lot of familiar stuff floating around in that little blurb. There's one key difference in that he fused armor to her body. So, we'll get into it, but it's very much like the arc reactor on Tony.
Yes.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Just on Pepper. And so that's the comic book version. But yeah, so we'll get into it right here. In the comics, we're first introduced to Pepper in Tales of Suspense. And funny enough, they made a typo. So it's not even a typo because you got to remember, all this stuff was done analog. It was done by hand. The person drawing wrote Kitty as her name, even though it's Pepper.
Yeah.
And so it's a gigantic, which is unfortunate because it's the very first panel that she's actually in the comic. So it's her first appearance, but not her first appearance. But they regard her as Kitty, even though she's clearly Pepper. And for the rest of the issue, it's Pepper, as it should be. But, and so, yeah, it's just a simple typo. Like, I have this reproduction page from an X-Men issue in my room, and you can see very clearly, I can't remember who the letterer was at the time, but, again, they're doing it by hand.
Yeah.
And so you see that the dialogue changed, and they just put white out on top of it and then rewrote it. And so maybe they didn't correct this in modern ages, but that's usually the thing that they would do, is just kind of, it's not like a computer. They don't just digitize it.
Yeah.
They had to physically like erase it and stuff. So they didn't do that here. I don't know why. Maybe they just said whatever. But Pepper is introduced as Tony Stark's secretary of sorts. And so she's also introduced with Happy Hogan, like I mentioned. And despite Happy's best efforts, they don't get along so well. So you know that really awful like New York accent that we've done in the Daredevil episodes?
Hundreds of times, yes.
Yeah, so that is kind of tonally how Happy sounds in the comics, at least to me, from a reader's perspective, because he's very much like described as like a boxer, a former boxer. And I think they actually talk about that.
I think they did
in the movie. Yeah,
that's number 2.
Yeah, and because that's why he's got such a presence the way he does.
Rule number 1: never take your eyes off.
Yeah, because he has also that entire scene with Natasha.
Yes.
Or Natalie Rushman in the ring. And so every time I read these panels, I think of the accent, which is really awful.
Just a horrible New York accent.
It's just so awful. Yes. How'd you like that? I flip over the doll.
I'm not even going to attempt to react.
Come on, do it. Do it. And so anyway.
Hey.
I know it's really bad. I got a picture. It's him, Stark. Who makes you tick or go thump, thump, right?
Well, because I think,
it's just like, how else would you do it? And so immediately, Happy is kind of attracted to Pepper.
Uh-huh.
And Pepper's like, you know what? No, I am destined to be the first or next Mrs. Tony Stark. Like she has aspirations for Stark. So it turns into an immediate love triangle. It's interesting because you don't really get like Pepper Potts. Oh, sorry. You don't really get Pepper Potts from the panel, right? It's kind of like she's kind of got brownish blonde hair.
Just like a regular person.
Yeah, but the whole Pepper idea is that she's peppered with freckles. And then they kind of amalgamated it later on with giving her red hair. She's fiery like a pepper. Redheads, man. Jeff's just shaking his head.
Just too on the nose.
It's very on the nose, yeah. So she's kind of one of those characters that I think took it with her along the way, right? Like they tried to make it a little better, and we'll talk about that eventually. But in this issue, it revolves around a doctor named Shapanka. I should have looked.
What do you say?
Shapanka.
You say Shaka Khan?
Is it Shaka Khan? Shaka Khan. No, it's Dr. Shapanka. Okay. It's just weirder to actually say out loud. I've read it a million times, but he's a scientist who is essentially one of the many scientists that work for Stark Industries, and he's soon revealed to be stealing the information, the research, and he's outsourcing it, selling it to other buyers. And so when Tony realizes this, they go toe to toe, and things get a little ugly. It's later that Shapanka becomes an adversary to Stark, and he wants to get his revenge on both Tony Stark and Iron Man. And you got to remember, these are the days that they're two different...
Separate people.
Yes, they're separate people.
Yes.
So none of the characters know that he's both. It's full of the tropes of like, I have to leave the room, like without them realizing that I'm Iron Man. And he's putting on each piece of armor from his briefcase.
That's so hilarious.
It's so funny that, considering, like how far it's come. But so yeah, Shapanka becomes this adversary, Jack Frost, who I like compared to Iceman or even Mr. Freeze, which is funny because I think Mr. Freeze didn't come out till like 20 years after this character, but they're very similar in a few ways. And so naturally, Iron Man, not Tony Stark, saves the day, and the three of them just kind of carry on in this trio sort of slapstick way throughout their entire classic tenure. So it's always Happy is trying to get to Pep, but Pep is trying to get to Stark, and Stark's like, I don't give about anybody except for Tony Stark, right? Yeah. He doesn't care. And so it's not until like 45 years later, almost more than 45 years later, that Pepper actually becomes the rescue character that we've mentioned at the top of the show. So she throughout the course, like many of these sub characters, they come in and out, like they're there for a very long time.
Yeah.
And once the storyline gets a little stale, or they realize, oh, we can't really do anything, they just kind of don't put them anywhere. Then they bring them back for a minute and they're like, oh, let's see where it goes. And then they do the bump up. So it took them 45 years to do that with Pepper.
Such a long time. What?
Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah, it's more than half the comic books, right? Existence. And so, yeah, so for more than 45 years later, she makes her debut as Rescue in The Invincible Iron Man number 10, cover dated May 2009. From a 1963 debut, which is like...
Oh my gosh. Wow,
it took them
the
that
timing
long.
of that. Wow.
Yeah, exactly. And you've caught on to that date because when was Iron Man 1 released?
2008.
So they were working on it, more than likely working on it concurrently with the film. And so they're like, well, Pepper Potts is going to be relevant again. What can we do? And also preparation for what happens to her in the third movie. It's all part of the wheel, man. It's all part of the wheel of fate.
Just milking it.
Yeah, they know how it's the marketing scheme of schemes. And thankfully, in this case, like many of the other characters, like, you know, Spider-Gwen is a great example that they've given them a glow up where she's no longer just the secretary that's being, you know, like pursued by the friend.
Yeah.
She's more than just a love interest. She's actually a heroine of her own. And so when it comes to Pepper becoming Rescue to begin with, the incident is best described at the top of Rescue number 1, which came out in 2010. Another pretty recent comic as far as things go. And it says, Pepper Potts was critically injured in a terror attack targeting her boss, Tony Stark. To save her life, Tony implanted a repulsor device in her chest like his own. And when he presented her with her own suit of Stark Tech armor, Pepper became the hero called Rescue. So during this event, you know, like he does in the films, Stark has all these subdivision industries across the globe. And so in particular, there was a Stark Dynamics location in Taipei. And so there's an event and Pepper's there doing her thing because Iron Man isn't there. And then, or rather Tony Stark isn't there. And then the attack happens. She's left in critical condition. And it happens to be a man named Ezekiel Stane. Mm-hmm.
Okay, continue.
Who is the son of Obadiah Stane.
I was thinking Stone for some reason. No, Obadiah Stone.
Obadiah, Ezekiel, and I forgot his father's name. Edidiah. It's like, you know, it's so interesting. Edidiah. The Hatfields and McCoys. And so anyway, yeah, he's the son of Obadiah Stane in the comics. And Obadiah Stane, of course, is the Ironmonger, who is in Iron Man 1, portrayed by Jeff Bridges. So that character's son basically nearly kills her. Tony comes to her rescue, no pun intended, implants the RT thing in her chest, and she becomes her own version of Iron Man. So we'll get to that in a minute, but yes, Virginia Pepper Potts, portrayed by Gwyneth Paltrow.
Woo!
First seen in 2018's Iron Man, directed by
2008.
What did I say?
2018.
Oh my goodness. 2000, because I'm looking at the next line. 2008's Iron Man, directed by Jon Favreau and Shane Black. Last seen, can you believe it's already been 4 years since we've seen Pepper Potts? Avengers Endgame. 4 years.
Really?
It's been 4 years.
Came out 2019.
Yeah.
Ew.
Isn't that weird?
That's a whole tenure of high school. It's gross.
Wow. That seems a lot longer when you say it like
gross.
that. That's so crazy. But like time, right? Just like, no pun intended with that.
Nice.
Yeah,
I get the reference.
Just like,
she's out here Thanosing it up.
Man. And so, you know, of course, Pep appeared in phases 1 through 3 and is pretty much part of that starter roster of the MCU.
Yep.
As we officially know it. So yeah, like, shall we talk about Pep a bit? She first started as Stark's personal assistant.
Yes.
Then his unrequited love.
Yes.
Then business partner.
Yes.
Then CEO.
Yes.
Then eventually wife and partner.
Exactly.
So, heck yeah, girl.
I mean, I'm glad she got, an arc, She's going from assistant, like you said, to 12% of the company to see fully running.
Yeah.
And ultimately encompassing her, with the suit in Endgame.
Yeah.
That was I was hyped when I saw that. I was like, whoa.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's go.
Because also, like, knowing that version of the character and at least that era of the character.
Yeah.
When Iron Man 3 dropped, maybe this was originally a reason why I didn't love Iron Man 3. Because I was like, come on, man, you just gave her an arm thingy and that's it. Whereas I expected them to give her a suit. But of course, at the time, like, the expectancy to see that.
Yeah.
Like, again, like we were saying at the top of the show, it's like, it took me 20 years to get a yellow suited Wolverine. Like, I never anticipated her to actually get her suit. Yeah.
Iron Man 3.
Right.
After
the safety protocol in Malibu, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So everyone was probably, I don't know if I remember being like, ooh.
Yeah.
But then.
Yeah.
And then, the whole fake death thing.
Sure. Yeah. And what's funny is that a lot of these notes that they hit in the storyline in the original Iron Man trilogy, they're all like subtle callbacks to things that do happen in the comics in a way.
I would assume.
But overall, Pepper is that character. She's the one cleaning up his messes. She's the one very elegantly speaking up for herself and also like kind of having a nervous breakdown in a funny way.
Yeah.
She's so similar to the comic book version, at least, canonically the one. Well, not even that. Yeah. Like, I guess back in the past and also the modernization version, because of course they've changed her to be a little more like the Gwyneth Paltrow version, right? But yeah, like the way that the character kind of has this almost perfect beginning and quote unquote ending is, I think, something that's pretty rare in
especially for
MCU.
a very side character.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
So yeah, it's really nice.
Yeah, for sure. And so I moved aesthetic up. This is not unlike our Nick Fury episode where it's kind of important to actually talk about the visualization of the character. And so on our doc, Jeff, you can see I put, this another marvelous composition from Accurate MCU where you can see Gwyneth next to the comic book version. And yeah, it's pretty spot on, for what it is, because, they went with a very natural look for the character in the MCU. She is technically like a strawberry blonde,
strawberry blonde. That's a good one.
Yeah. A natural, redhead, if you will. And yeah, in the modernization of the character, she's very business suited. And then when it comes to Rescue, we're going to talk a bit about Rescue in just a second, but the Rescue armor was initially aesthetically similar to Iron Man. So we never see that. Maybe there's an Easter egg. I don't believe there is, but her suit used to be red and yellow in the comics, like this other picture over here. But of course they modified it when Endgame came out, and they made and introduced this blue and silver, which I think is pretty solid.
I liked it.
I love the blue and silver. Well,
just because obviously it's like in contrast to Tony.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I agree. And so, so from that, we'll just jump into powers and paraphernalia. So she technically has no power. She is, once again, one of these humanoid characters, as rare as that is in the Marvel Universe. But, we've also encountered so many enhanced super beings. Pep is definitely one of the prominent characters that has no powers, but she does have the suit. So, like, we previously mentioned, she's got the help of the repulsor tech. So, again, it's kind of like an arc reactor. And then her suit is empowered with with certain specifications that are not unlike Tony's, of course. It allows her to have she's empowered with energy emanation, electrical field detection, magnetic force fields, enhanced senses and strength, as well as regenerative durability and superhuman strength when she is rescue.
Wow.
And so in the MCU, of course, they changed that a tiny bit, especially again with Iron Man 3, which the more that we talk about Iron Man 3, I'm like, it is a catalyst for a lot of things that happen after that film.
Yeah.
And so, in particular, Pep was laced with the extremists. So, which I added an asterisk real quick. Spoiler alert about extremists. If you have not seen Secret Invasion episode 4, our girl Gaia has taken it, been laced with it.
She put herself through the trials.
Yeah, she has injected herself with extremists.
You know what I will say though? They kind of like, what's that word? That they kind of like ignored that Pepper has the extremist thing inside of her.
She doesn't anymore.
She doesn't anymore.
No, like Tony, I think if you rewatch it at the end of the film or near the end of the film, like Tony concocted whatever he had to do.
Oh, did he?
To take it away. To take it out of her.
Iron Man 3?
Yes. And so that's
I need to rewatch Iron Man 3.
Yeah. And so Extremis itself, it's an enhanced nanotech-based genetic manipulation serum in the MCU created by Maya Hansen and Dr. Aldrich Killian in Iron Man 3. And so it enables superhuman physical enhancements, healing, and regeneration from physical damages, deformities, and even psychological damages, as well as accelerated regrowth of severed limbs, which is like that whole thing. Yeah, like, if you if you rewatch Iron Man 3, like the people that had been injected with it, they lose a limb, it just grows back. It's like lava stuff.
So weird.
Yeah, it's very and I think I said this in our Rhodey episode. It was like really the first time we saw anything that was remotely mutant like come into the MCU like that.
Yeah.
Because they were very much super beings that were not the usual kind of thing that we saw in Iron Man films, especially. Like it's always been technical, scientific forms, like people wearing suits, like Whiplash, for instance, War Machine, and then in Iron Man 3 you're introduced to these like people who could literally blow up and did. Yeah, it was something new for sure. And so they had side effects, of course, that were referred to as exothermic side effects, which are basically like they generate extreme heat, and then the host would explode. We again saw Pep kind of take on Iron Man. The Iron Man mark was the first one in number 2. Was it 2 when the Malibu house goes kaput, or is that 3 also?
I think
that's the beginning of 3.
It's 3. It's mid 3.
Mid or no, beginning, because that's how he is launched outward, right? He's deployed out of the state.
Oh my god, I have to rewatch these again.
Yeah, it's in the beginning because it's the entire like first act. And so
quick side note, what happened in Iron Man 2?
Iron Man 2 was when Whiplash was introduced.
Whiplash.
Ivan.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then that's when we actually met Don Cheadle for the first time.
Okay, so then Iron Man 3, I think the Malibu house is for sure.
Because that's like the entire.
Yeah.
Which is Alicia Keys' house, or her last house. She owned that house.
The more you know.
Right. Like, dang, girl. So anyway, like, yeah, we've seen flickers of Pepper in an Iron Man suit, but after Tony created the suit for Pepper, it empowered her with, in the MCU at least, super strength, durability, speed, agility, and reflexes, as well as flight, with a built-in unibeam, among other features that came with the most Iron Man marks of the time of its build. So yeah, like, a lot of the things that we have seen on screen with Tony, basically you just copy and paste it over to Pepper. She's probably a little lighter because it's a smaller suit. It has less functionality in some aspects, and it's not like War Machine where he's got like a tank on his back. And so from what we know of Rescue, it was built sometime after the blip and then featured on screen when Morgan Stark found the helmet, which is interesting because, I hadn't really thought about it too hard. And even Morgan Stark herself, I was like, oh yeah, so she was pregnant in the beginning of Infinity War.
Yes.
When they're like jogging in the park and they have this exchange.
Yes, probably.
Right. And so she was pregnant then. Thankfully didn't get snapped.
Both of them didn't, yeah.
Yeah, thankfully both of them, yeah. And then we're introduced to Rescue and Morgan at the same time, which is pretty nice. And so before we get into more about Morgan Stark, are you ready for your one and only pop quiz?
I suppose.
So, while Tony has engineered over 60 suits in the comics, how many has Pepper had? Reminder in the comics. Reminder in the MCU, she only had one.
One.
Yeah.
I can tell you how much Iron Man had in MCU.
And this is why I'm infamously asking, like, in contrast to your epic win in episode 1, can you now guess how many Pepper has had in the comics?
If Tony had so many, he has so many in the comics.
Sure.
Obviously. I don't even know exactly how many. I forget. We've talked about it.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah. I think at one point when I was reading backwards, he had at least 1,400.
Oh, damn. Okay,
It's
I was
insane.
thinking at
Yeah.
least triple digits, but okay.
Yeah, 14. I think I saw the number like 1464 or
So
something.
how many has Pep had?
How many has Pep had in the
I
comics?
feel like it's like significantly lower. Like it's even like 1% of that.
Okay.
Which that would make it like 100 some, right? A 1,400. Oh God.
But just remember, Rescue was introduced in 2009.
2010. Would you say it's 2000?
2009. So she was only introduced in 2009.
Okay. I'm going to go with the number.
Try not to look you in the face because I'm going to give it away.
2010. God. Mm-hmm. I mean, is she as reckless as Tony is with the suits?
I mean, that's Pepper Potts.
That's what I'm saying.
It's Pepper Potts, buddy.
My gut. Never mind. I don't know any.
No, come on.
I think my gut is literally saying less than 10.
Okay.
And if not, I'm pushing that to 12. But I don't think it's there. I hate you. Why'd you react like that?
Because you're doing great, and then you like doubt yourself, and it's like.
Like my gut
Go
says
with your
less than
gut.
10.
Okay, that's
So
great.
I'm gonna go with my favorite number. One of my favorite numbers, 8.
Is that your final answer?
Yeah, I'm saying.
So close. You're so close. It's 5.
Ah!
But you're right there. You're right. You're right in that it was less than 10. So not to bring in the rule of 5 in general in the Marvel comics, but like, it's said that the equivalent of 5 years is the equivalent of 1 year in the comic book life. So if she's been around for 14 years,
14.
let's say it's 3 years in her lifetime as Rescue. And so, okay, how many upgrades has she had? And not to say that that's factual in this case.
Gotcha.
But that's kind of what gives you the semblance of, okay, let me get an idea. And yeah, she's not Tony Stark, and she is getting it from Tony. And, Tony is number 1 in Tony's book, especially when it comes to the comics. So she's had 5 in the comics.
Wow.
Yeah,
That is not a lot.
Yeah, and so in homage, this part's going to blow your mind a little, and we're not going to talk about it more until later on. But in homage to her dearly departed divorcee, Pepper's latest suit even featured its own AI named acronym HAPPY.
Ha.
Hosted analog program pre-Y2K.
Wow, they really filled it up there.
Yeah, right. So we'll talk about that a bit later down the line. And so for now, we're going to dive into family, friends, and affiliations. So Morgan Stark, this is an interesting one because, the MCU as a whole is filled with insane Easter eggs of all kinds.
Yes.
Like if it's a playback to an actual event, if it's just a title, if it's a character name, if it's a gender swap, like all these things are part of this grander story. But when it comes to Morgan Stark, it's actually quite surprising because the character does exist. It is not at all the same character. And so in the comic books, funny enough, Morgan Stark is actually the son of Tony's uncle Edward, aka Howard Stark's brother. So Howard Stark and Tony Stark are the same as Edward Stark and Morgan Stark.
Oh my gosh.
So they're cousins.
Okay.
Yeah. And so in a nutshell, as means of escaping the stress of the family business that is Stark Industries, Edward gave his shares to Howard,
yes,
who then gave them to Tony. And so as a result, Morgan was like, man, I got gypped. How come I didn't get a chance? And so that basically cements his role as an adversary of Tony's. And so, yeah, there's some bad family blood going on. Yeah, and so it is a distant departure from the Morgan Stark we're introduced to in the Avengers games, of course, portrayed as a child by Lexi Rabe, and then as an adult in a deleted scene by Catherine Langford, who I love. And so I'm kind of like, oh man, because I doubt she'll come back for anything. Like that was it, at least for her, for Catherine. But yeah, I am curious why they decided to take that name on. Maybe they just wanted to make it a better thing, or like Morgan being sort of like a gender fluid name too. Yeah. It's very, very modern. So maybe it's as simple as that. But of course, the character was first, last, and seen in 28. And see, I wrote 2018 in this one. So is it 2018 or 2019 that Endgame came out? Either way, it's a long time already.
2019 for sure.
Directed by the Russo brothers. Yeah, and so do you think we'll ever see Morgan Stark again? No, right? That's why we have Ironheart, because we got Ironheart now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just gotta let things go.
Gotta let it go. And so someone we've discussed very recently, James Rhodey Rhodes. And so surprisingly enough, I would say comparatively, there's not much of a difference between the comic book and the MCU dynamic.
Yeah.
They have these occasional run-ins, they have joint missions, but nothing super outstanding. They don't severely impact one each other's like stories.
Yeah.
At all in the comics. Of course, Rhodey portrayed by Don Cheadle, and most recently seen in Secret Wars. Secret Invasion, sorry. And like I said, spoiler alert, I should have bought a lotto ticket because he's a Skrull. Like I said, I swear to God, I've been saying this for years. 4 years! But I don't even know why. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know why. I just got the vibe that, like, he's not... Like, wouldn't that be messed up if they're like, oh yeah, like, after Iron Man 2, he just...
Trust your gut.
Right?
I think my thing is, I think he's a Skrull. It's after Endgame.
Yeah.
So maybe
after the Iron Man, the War Machine.
Yeah, the roads we saw in Falcon Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
Might be a Skrull.
Yeah. That's the general consensus.
I know that. Say that again.
That's the general consensus, is that it's around that timeline.
I think that rubs people the wrong way, just because of that conversation that
he has with Sam.
With Sam. So people are like, oh, so it's all just, and it's like, it's not that it's fake. It's just that it was probably a genuine conversation, but it was just like.
And it could also be after that moment. Like, it doesn't have to be very, exactly when Falcon and Winter Soldier started. It could be somewhere down that line.
Yeah.
As that's all going down with the rebels and, Walker. Somewhere in that mess could have been the exchange or the swap out, I
mean, we're going to find out sooner or later how that came to be.
I know. And, of course, not to veer off into Secret Invasion land, but I think that's why they do take the beats of conversation that they do in this series already, right? Like, you're introduced to, like, at the beginning of this episode, for instance, a poem that is later recited again. And so
I like that.
I know, I loved it. It made me cry. And they have now introduced this, who were you? Why did you choose this face? So
We'll
I think,
find out sooner or later.
Yeah,
we will talk about it in our mini Marvel when the series is done.
I can't
for
wait.
the season.
Yeah. So I can't wait. So yeah, we recently discussed Rhodey. Of course, this was pre-Secret Invasion, but we did a character study in episode 53. They didn't have too much on-screen time together, right? Not
Screen
too
time?
much. Yeah, Pep and Rhodey.
No, actually, no. Yeah, I don't think that much. Maybe the most was probably maybe an Iron Man 2.
Yeah, I would say so too, because I don't even remember Terrence Howard really being in the same room as her.
No,
because he wasn't on screen
really
that much.
like a thing.
Yeah, so super interesting. And of course, when it comes to both the comics and the films, honorable mentions to Riri Williams in the comics, who Pepper worked with when Tony wasn't around, and one of the many times that he was either dead or missing. And then, of course, Phil Coulson in the MCU side, as you mentioned, Jeff. Phil! No, his first name is Agent.
Mr. Stark?
Phil, come in.
Phil? I can't stay.
His first name is Agent.
And so one of the most interesting bits of any character, really, the love interests. When it comes to Pep, she's got a few people worth talking about. 3 in particular. The first one is Mark Kumar, and so I didn't write too much about this guy. Long story short, they met during an event in Vegas. They dated for months, they got engaged, and then he became an ally of the Mandarin and took on the name The Liar. And so, gosh, what was it again? So we talked about the 10 rings a bit in our Shang-Chi episode,
yes.
right? Way back. And so each of the rings has a purpose and a different power, right? And so the Marcus took on one of the rings, and it turned him into The Liar. And so he could... he just turned into flames or something. His entire body just changed. And so I put on my bullet point, end result, they broke up. Because, he tried to kill Iron Man, and you know how that goes.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. And there's no MCU counterpart when it comes to that. But that's more or less the outlier when it comes to someone serious in Pepper's life that wasn't one of the 2 men we're about to talk about. So that leads us to, speaking of HAPPY,
wow,
Harold Joseph Happy Hogan.
Just kept it in the triangle. That's
yeah,
crazy.
They really did. So going back to the old days, Pepper and Tony had a flirtatious dynamic from the get-go. Happy, however, didn't have the same luck, and so again, despite his romantic pursuit of Pepper, she constantly rejected the homie. She was like, no,
just like Aunt
not
May.
into you. Yeah, actually, yeah, it's kind of like Aunt May in a weird, oh my God.
I just think of Jon Favreau in Spider-Man.
My mind just blew up. Yeah, it's absolutely like that.
Were you crying? Yeah, your Aunt May and I broke up.
Yes.
It was a break. I mean, it was kind of just...
Yes, actually, it's quite similar to that. Just imagine it being Pepper instead. And so that was the comic book version. And so it's just off and on for a very long time. And in the end, all it took was just, a life-threatening situation to bring them together. So it was so impactful that it made Pepper realize that after all this time, she actually did love Happy in a romantic sense. And so their relationship finally materializes, and then they leave Stark Industries together. So he loses his chauffeur.
Wow.
And he loses his, I think at the time, she was probably more than his personal assistant, but maybe more of the secretary, business partner sense. They both leave Stark Industries, and then they go elope.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's like for real. This is her ride or die in the comic. And so despite the efforts, the 2 couldn't keep it together. And because they couldn't conceive. Yeah. They wanted children, it wouldn't happen. And so they decided, hey, how about this? Let's adopt a girl and a boy. They adopt children. They have children together. And so sadly, there's this big moment in the comics where, of course, Happy is another character we can talk about on his own, but he has a very bad spell where he kind of turns into an alcoholic of sorts, loses his job. He can't hold anything together Pep is the one being the breadwinner and keeping the family together. And so they then lose custody of the children.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so all that said, they eventually divorce. Even before that, like Pepper cheated on him, by the way.
Oh my god!
So she thought it's so dramatic. She thought
dramatic.
right. She thought he was cheating on her, so she went and cheated on him, but he didn't do any of that. And then he found out, and they were like, "Okay, this isn't working anymore." And so, unfortunately, even though they parted ways in 2006, Happy then dies. Jeff is like, his face jarred.
This is very dramatic.
Yeah, it's super dramatic. He dies after an encounter with a villain called the Spy Master, who we've talked about very briefly.
Yeah, very briefly.
It's just a weird Iron Man like sub character, and he comes in and out of different heroes' lives. But yeah, he's injured like many of these characters are in battle. You know, he's on the sidelines, and then he goes into a coma, I believe, and he's in a vegetative state.
Oh my god!
And there's this entire, part of an issue where Tony is kind of like, he's like, this is his best friend. He wants to keep him alive. And then Pepper recalls a moment where Happy was like, you know what? If that ever happened to me, I would just want to go.
Damn.
So she tells Tony, and then, she leaves, and then somewhere down the line, he's removed from life support and he dies. He's never come back in the comics. He's dead in the comic books.
Wow.
Yeah. So he's a big part of the comic book version's life. Whereas in the MCU, Harold Joseph Happy Hogan is portrayed by our beloved Jon Favreau. First seen in 2008's Iron Man, directed by himself and Shane Black. And last seen in 2 years ago in Spider-Man No Way Home, directed by John Watts.
Yeah.
Time. And so, yeah, I feel like the roots of their dynamic are very, very like platonic, very caring about one another. And clearly he plays a huge part because he's basically Morgan's like godfather.
Yes.
But yeah, that's nothing at all like the comic book.
I hope to God we never see that.
It's so bizarre.
It's
interesting. It's kind of like, I feel like they kind of adopted that trope in many of the classic books where it's like the innocent secretarial type of female figure is loved and adored by the big brute who is rough around the edges.
Yeah.
And then there's the handsome superhero at the forefront, and it's a love triangle, because this is the same that could be said between Peter Parker, Gwen Stacy, and Harry Osborn.
That is very true.
Right. Cyclops, Jean, and Wolverine.
Another one. Very true.
So it's kind of replicated over time, but yeah, they did not carry that over into the MCU world. But yeah, they had some really funny scenes as well. I think Iron Man 2, they have quite a few, especially like right from the get-go on the racetrack.
Yes, that's one of my favorites too.
I don't know, like there are parts that just stand out to me.
Don't be the case.
Yeah.
Don't be the case. And then Pepper's just like, ah!
When Gwyneth Paltrow like loses her
It's
mind.
so funny.
It's so funny.
Like it's so like
She's
it's
so
great.
composed, right?
Yeah.
And like I don't know if you knew this, but like back in the day, Emma and I, Jared's Emma, like we would call her. She was Pepper Potts, and I always called her Pepper Potts, and she'd be like, "It's me," and so like it makes it a little more funnier for me because I imagine Emma like freaking out, like which she never did. She's very much like Pepper, very composed and very, very like in control in a very cool manner. And so to see Pep flipping out the way she does in Iron Man 2 and like in Iron Man 1, for instance, when she's pulling the wire from his chest in that incredible,
I just heard my favorite line from that. He's like, all right, so you're gonna see a silver wire. Whatever you do, don't pull the wire. It's like, oh, what's happening now?
Oh, nothing.
I'm just gonna go into cardiac arrest. It's fine.
And that scene is like marvelous. Like, truly like top really 10 MCU moments, because even the way that they shot and filmed it is incredible. Because me too. Like when I was watching it, I was like, how did they do that? Is it CGI? And then no, it's a practical practical stunt where it's a fake body, but it's RDJ's like
head.
Yeah, clavicle upward.
Yeah.
Genius, absolutely genius. And so I love moments like that with her. And that's kind of why I love the dynamic she does end up having with Happy, because it brings them kind of back to this 1963 tone of like, again, slapstick sort of ridiculousness. But yeah, last but not least, when it comes to the love interests, however, is Mr. Anthony Edward Tony Stark.
Who? Never heard of this man. Ever.
I'm Iron Man. So throwback to Hawkeye, back in episode 15, where we discussed one of the many dates where Tony's allegiance to his secret identity lost him chances with Pepper. So rewind real quick, all the way back to that episode, we talked about how Hawkeye's like origin story of sorts, right?
Yeah.
It manifested while he was in a carnival.
Yes.
And so Tony, and this is when they were really starting to pull together what semblance of would be the Avengers one day. And so Tony brought Pepper on a date very reluctantly to that same carnival that Hawkeye was at. And so it's one of those things where like Happy couldn't be with her, so he was like, Tony, you take her out. You take her out on a date. Go take her out on a date. And so he would just take her places. And then he was like, oh no, there's a catastrophe. I gotta go. And then here comes Iron Man. And then he's like, oh, I'm so sorry, Pepper. Like, you know, and he would just he would ghost on her all the time.
To save the world.
To save the world. And so while they had good chemistry in the beginning, especially in the comics, Tony just wanted to help Happy bag her more than he wanted to. So it then turned into him, you know, persuading Happy, you know, like maybe you should just, you know, I got some other stuff to do. Like there's a panel, a couple of panels where in fact like Tony walks in and he's like, hey Pep, what do you think about blah blah, like this fancy restaurant? And she's like, oh yeah, I'd love to go, that'd be awesome, I'll make a oh yeah, I'd love to go. And then he goes, great, I'll make a reservation for 2. I'm gonna take that blonde from accounting. And she's like, what the and so that happens a lot in the comics. And so, you know, it just never takes off. It never really takes off. There are points in the modern comics, of course, where they're trying to replicate the MCU version. They do have moments. Pepperoni is a thing. You've heard this, right? Pepperoni with a Y.
You mentioned it. Yeah, I think you have.
It's their ship name, Jeff. Pepperoni with a Y. So it does happen. It happens at points, but it just never goes beyond that. It never goes beyond something like they've just been with each other for so long that they understand each other, but there's nothing. It's not nearly as impactful on her as Happy is. So it just it stays there. It doesn't go any further. And like many of his closest confidants, Stark named one of his AI programs after Pep, the PEPPER,
which stands for
there's actually no reveal of what it means. I was gonna say I scoured.
What are we doing here?
Scoured. Like, what does PEPPER?
Like, too many P's. I don't know.
I know, that's right. Like practical engineering, psychology, and forensics is an F.
They were just like, oh, we gotta use her as an acronym, but we don't know what it means.
Party enhancement replicatory rescue or something. I'm sure rescue is the R, but there's nothing. But it was probably because they couldn't make an acronym that made sense. They then later named it Helen, Helen, after the Helen of Troy. I don't remember what that acronym is.
There's gotta be somebody that works at comics and stuff whose job specifically is to come up with acronyms.
I want that job. I would be baller at that job. Hire me for that job. Yeah, I don't know. Well, actually, I just said forensics with a P, so maybe not. So, of course, Anthony Edward Tony Stark, portrayed by Robert Downey Jr., the GOAT. Who, rip, we've not seen since 2019, and we probably
I hope
will
we
never,
don't.
Never
Keep
see him
his
again.
ass dead. I'm going to say it. Hot take. All this multiverse stuff, no.
Yeah, no, he's one they can't
I don't even want to see him there.
Like the idea that Tom Cruise would have shown up in No Way Home was like fun for a minute, but I was like, nah, don't. If I
ever see Robert Downey Jr. in person, I'll be like, don't come back.
I will pay you to not.
You don't owe us anything.
No, they don't. He doesn't. He definitely doesn't.
And this is coming from the biggest Iron Man fan.
Fanatic, yeah. True that. So yeah, we haven't really discussed Tony since our very, very first episode. So let's sit with Iron Man a bit. Let's do this. Let's talk about it. But then you want to watch Iron Man 3 again. So there's also that.
I do.
Yeah. Do you have
I've
a favorite?
I've seen it multiple times, but I want to because I know people like people like did not like it. Obviously.
3?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they're like, what is I think it was the whole Mandarin thing. Like that was like
it was
a main reason.
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, now we're going to this like extremist thing going on. Like, oh, Pep dies, but not really.
See, and that's the thing. And again, that's probably part of my reason why I didn't like it so much at first is that you even forget that that's the same movie. Because it's so
there's a lot of layers.
Different. Yeah, there's so many layers to it. Because, like, if you do look back on Iron Man 1, it was very Obadiah Stane. And it was just about the Iron Man mark. It was an origin story.
Yep.
But they really stayed in that lane of it's about this suit. It's about the suit that comes from that and all the trial and error. And then, you know, of course, Tony Stark, the industrialist, right?
Yeah.
And then in Iron Man 2... even though it takes place, you know, like with these characters that are far away from the usual scope, they're still staying in that lane of, okay, it's about the tech, it's being stolen, it's being created for Hammer. They're doing this stuff with Whiplash and the suit.
It's just Hammer and Whiplash.
Yeah. And then here comes 3, like the black sheep of the trio being like, all right, well, here's a serum that makes super soldiers that explode. And also... here's a Mandarin, but he's not the Mandarin you think he is.
He's an actor.
He's an actor. Yeah. And then the Pepper stuff on top of that, and I mean it's a lot. And Iron Patriot. Iron Patriot.
There's a lot.
And it's hot little second of cameo.
But Hal's party protocol was definitely one of my favorite scenes.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is a lot.
It's a lot.
But if you rewatch these movies like years later, you're kind of like, oh well, it wasn't horrible.
No,
that's what I said about.
For sure.
That's what I said about Thor: Dark World.
Yeah, and Ultron.
Funny side story: I went to my friend Nick's house.
Yeah.
Like last week,
and
we're just like what movie should we watch? And I don't know what like led up to this conversation, but like we're talking about like I don't know like bad movies or like movies you can't really sit through. And he was like. And he was talking like smack to me. He was like, shut up or I'm going to make you watch Thor Dark World. And I was like, you mother. I was like, you know. I was like, look, it's not that bad anymore. Okay?
Bad. Yeah. In hindsight,
but he listens.
Like, yeah.
Thanks for listening, Nick. Shout out.
Hey. That's funny. That's really funny. Yeah, like it's kind of what it's like the fruit of the tree that fell off and kind of got bruised. And it's not so great, but it's not so bad.
Yeah.
And sadly, I think that Quantumania made that list too, right? It's kind of...
Unfortunately. I don't think it's like horrible.
I still don't think it's that bad. I just don't like all the CGI.
It's a lot.
It's just a lot. Yeah.
It's going into a place that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So...
yeah, it's like...
I mean...
yeah. I still think it was fun.
Yeah.
I mean, what else is there to say? I mean, it's the character himself... Tony Stark, and I think we've mentioned this previously, is that version of Tony Stark that they created for MCU was truly so sensational and so likable despite his shortcomings.
Yeah.
Whereas in the comics, he does have not so great moments very often, and he overall is kind of a douche. He's kind of not great.
That first Iron Man movie?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. You're kind of like, oh my God, how am I supposed to like this guy?
Yeah.
And then you end up doing because that's what happens over like, you know, the story arc of the movie, the multiple movies he was in.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah. But
the GOAT.
Yeah. Just leave it how it is, man.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to I think if that ever were to happen, if Iron Man were to show up in whatever as a cameo or whatever, I think I would legitimately just let out a big Oh, God. Like, why?
Yeah.
Why? People are going to be clapping, right?
Sure.
They're going to be like, oh, my God, yeah. I'm going to be like, no. You should have stayed dead.
Yeah. I mean, so here's a question for you. Do you think we'll ever see a reboot?
I'm gonna. The day that happens, I leave this earth. I leave.
The day that happens, I will have left this earth. I'm hoping.
If that happens, the podcast ends.
It will spontaneously human combust.
Yeah.
Podcast combust. Yeah.
I know. I mean, that's so easy for me to say because we've had so many reboots.
Sure.
So many like things, but it's like.
I don't think they'll ever do that.
No.
Not for. I mean,
can't.
It's already so far. Like it's gone like so many lifetimes.
Yeah.
In the phases that they've done, and Iron Man was so, who's such an integral part of that.
Yeah.
To then be like in 20 years to reboot it seems it's like the audacity.
Yeah, if I'm 40 and there is like a new Iron Man coming out.
Yeah.
And it's literally the same thing but just a different I'll be like, why?
Dude, that's how I feel as a Spider-Man fan.
That's that's why I said earlier where I was like I know it's easy to say but they've rebooted Spider-Man so many freaking
Spider-Man
times.
and Batman have really paid the toll.
But there's only one person that's fault in that, and it's Sony. Sony does not know how to freaking handle their titular superhero.
So you're telling me you don't want to cover Kraven?
I mean, sure. If I turn into a hunter by lion's blood, let's freaking do it. They don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
But who am I to tell? Like
it's really unfortunate.
Everyone's each their own, but it's just like...
Sure. But I think that's also not to pun it, but it's a stark contrast, right? Like there's that studio that's kind of intermingled with the home front, right?
Yeah.
They've really messed it up.
Yeah. And
they
look what
had to
happened
do it.
When Spidey joined the MCU.
Exactly. Play nice, y'all. Just play nice.
And now you have nowhere. Now
Right.
there's no talks of, who's going to replace Spider-Man?
Oh, yeah, never.
No.
They're like,
because
so
you're like,
when is-
no, it's Tom.
Yeah, they're like,
It's Tom.
when is it coming out?
Yeah.
They're like, when is it happening?
Like, it's Tom
When's
Holland.
the next movie?
Yeah.
It's very
Like,
true.
you're not thinking, I'm like, who could be the next Spider-Man? No.
No, yeah. And I think that's also why that's the beauty of it working in Tony's favor and his periphery of characters is because it's so well done from the get, they don't need to rewind.
Yeah.
So we won.
Here's a super side tangent question.
Yes.
When do you think Spider-Man is done in movies?
Bruh. I don't know. I don't think that's
a good question because it's like he's
so...
You always feel like he can never just go away.
No, I don't think
Not
he will.
like Iron Man. Like Iron Man is okay. Like RDJ did his run.
Sure.
No one could ever touch like Iron Man and Tony Stark.
Yeah.
But now you're like, can Peter Parker Spider-Man ever be just like
God, man,
done off screen?
I don't think so.
I mean, he's died in one movie.
Yeah, I don't
Into
think
the
so.
Spider-Verse, like that was okay, cool. And Miles Morales, like it's like when you move on from a different version of that character, like from Steve to Sam, like cool, like but to like have another version of that character, I don't
know, man. Especially because of movies like Into the Spider-Verse and Across the Spider-Verse, right? They and the multiverse for that matter. They've really introduced the idea and concept of it. They're normalizing that concept and idea.
Yeah.
And so now, whereas before they used to have to make excuses like, oh, Tobey Maguire isn't coming back because blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
Then they had to make an excuse. Oh well, Andrew Garfield's not coming back because in the second movie didn't do so great. Blah 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 blah. And then it turned into now it's Tom Holland and he's done 3 movies plus the 2 that aren't his, or 3, whatever it is.
Yeah.
He's already at his cap, so to speak, right? He's already met the maximum he is required to do.
Yeah.
Here on out, it's either they just renew his contract, he signs a baller contract where he makes even more money than he can deal with. But where does he go from there? And so they could just, he's teased it, like, who's he going to pass the torch to? And yes, now it can be a Miles Morales. It can be a Miguel O'Hara. It can be a Penny Parker. And people are going to be like, dope, but they are going to be like, where's Peter Parker? They're always going to look for Peter Parker.
Just kill him. Kill him.
And then they'll be like, well, where's the other one?
Kill him.
We'll get another one.
Kill him. Wilson Fisk kills Spider-Man.
Well, they did in Gwen's verse. So, I mean, he dies in many universes. He dies in many of them.
Make it happen in MCU where he dies by Wilson Fisk.
They just have to bring a Spider-Sona up to that level.
Look, Jamie Foxx Electro thought he'd be black. There's a black Spider-Man roaming around.
God, that line is so good too. Yeah, so I think that's all that they have to do. But you know how people are; they're gonna immediately be like, "Okay, so does that mean Toby can come back?"
No.
Does that mean
pass the torch? Don't reboot the same person.
Toby is nearly 50 years old. He doesn't want to do that again. Maybe a cameo again, but he doesn't want to do a full movie.
His back hurts. Okay.
Yeah, you gotta leave him alone. He hurt his back riding Seabiscuit.
Come on.
And then Andrew, of course, like I would love to see Andrew again because he's amazing.
He's moved on.
No pun intended, but he's moved on. Like let them live.
Tom doesn't even want to act. He took
I
a break.
know, poor Tom. Oh, but yeah, I don't know. Unfortunately, he's like the most recognizable character of all time, right? Like he beat the mouse. The mouse used to be number one. Now it's Peter Parker / Spider-Man.
I agree.
So, to answer your question, no. He's gonna come back in one way or another. Whether that's because of Sony or if one day, knock on wood, he actually goes back to Marvel full force, that's all the more reason for them to do something with the character on home turf. You know what I mean? So he's unending.
Kevin, just kill
Feige!
Just kill Peter Parker.
Feige!
It's fine.
Feige!
It's fine. I know Amy Pascal would never allow that.
Oh, yeah,
though.
no, not 100.
So, I say what I'm saying, but Amy's never gonna let it happen.
No,
ever,
never in a billion years.
They're like, what do you mean I can't make another Peter Parker story?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know how to run this studio. Sorry, that was very spiteful.
I love it. He's definitely never gonna go away. And I think the same could be said for Batman. And then if they finally get it right, Superman. It's gonna be the same story. I mean, not literally, but maybe literally and figuratively.
We'll see Superman Legacy in a couple of years. So
yeah, so yeah, we'll see what happens. But no, I'm sure we'll see. I'm sure
that was a very long side tangent.
We may see. I know. We just love us some Spider-Man, though. But yeah, long story short, we may see another Peter Parker in our lifetime, but I don't think we'll see another Tony Stark. No. Not in that same breath.
I don't want to.
Yeah. And so that brings us to notable adversaries. And so easily said, Pep's enemies tend to skew very Iron Man heavy and even sometimes unexpected with the likes of Green Goblin. God, I swear that dude is everywhere in the comics. He is everywhere. Every single freaking superhero you can imagine, Green Goblin has come up through the ashes and tried to ruin their lives for some reason. And so he has done that with Pep. The Mandarin has come up. The actual Mandarin has come up a couple of times. But one of her biggest adversaries was actually Iron Man himself. And so, not my favorite, superior Spider-Man, but there was indeed the superior Iron Man.
Oh, I remember this.
Yeah, we've talked about this a couple of times. Speaking of, just jumping off the tangent of would we ever see another Tony Stark? I mean, this is the one and only exception, but even then I don't think I would like to see it.
Yeah.
So during an Avengers X-Men storyline often referred to as Axis, Earth's mightiest heroes and villains had their morality reversed by magic. So this is where the whole Hydra Cap thing also kind of came to play, right? It's sort of that mentality. That was a different scenario, but take the purest superhero like Steve Rogers and then twist the morality.
Yeah.
So that they were just like, you know what? I don't want to save those people. I'm just going to save me. It was kind of that kind of scenario. So this whole thing, not that Tony was a stand-up guy to begin with, but with this reverse, it created this version of Tony's persona that then took on, I believe it was not AI, but a synthetic version of his body because he had died. This is one of those moments where Tony Stark had died in the comics. And so he came back as this superior Iron Man. And so he walked the earth, making decisions as Tony Stark would, but for his own benefit. And so much that he was creating his own, God, I don't even know what to call it. Not religion, but like he was bringing up his own group of almost bad guys.
Oh my gosh.
It's like everything. I've written it down here. And so, even though the spell was eventually undone, Tony Stark managed to retain his corrupt state. He built an evil empire, including an app-based virus guised as Extremis 3.0. And so it made people addicted to the app. So,
oh my gosh.
Speaking of waking up and just going on an app.
Wow.
So this is going to sound really familiar, by the way. It began to curate this addiction in people. So much so that he would then deprive them, right? It's almost like a gateway drug.
Yeah.
So if you didn't pay for upgrades in this app, you would be denied enhancements.
Oh my gosh.
And the pay was $100 a day. So imagine, if you will.
A day? I just caught that. I was like, oh, like a month. I was like, a day?
So imagine a very scientific, brilliant-minded man.
Wow.
Who makes technology on the side.
Oh my God. That doesn't sound familiar.
Not at all. Tweep, tweep. Yeah, it's basically him. Superior Iron Man is basically...
Well, we know what comic book he reads.
That's what I said. I was like, oh my God, it's Elon
He probably read
Musk.
that and was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, genius.
What a great idea.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, oh my lordy. Yeah, so he's basically taken the route that Elon Musk took. Or vice versa. Elon Musk took the route that Superior Iron Man did.
Gross.
Mm-hmm.
Gross.
And so anyway, thankfully, when the incursion happened, and so the incursion we've mentioned in a few episodes by now, but that's basically when Earth 1610 and 616 collided, and then blah, 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 blah. Those people ceased to exist.
Yeah.
He met his fate during that entire thing. So he is no longer, thank God. But he was a gigantic adversary of Pepper's during that entire time. So I mean, I don't even know that she has like a true, like, you know, Green Goblin Superman dynamic with anyone. But Superior Iron Man is a front runner for many reasons, because of the Tony Stark relationship and all that stuff. But yeah, thankfully there's no MCU counterpart of that Iron Man or adversary. I don't think we'll ever see him. And so not to rehash what we've already kind of discussed, but we're just going to kind of quickly go through these other ones that we do see in the films, starting with Obadiah Stane. I don't have any recollection that they bump heads too often, if at all, in the comics. He did, however, make his first appearance nearly 15 years after Pepper. So he didn't come about until like 1985-ish, 1990. Okay. Yeah. We're, of course, portrayed by Jeff Bridges in the MCU, first seen in Iron Man. And then we last saw the character, at least, in 2021's What If, where he was voiced by Kif Vander Heuvel. He got punched by Happy. That's the one thing I really do remember. I think it was the What If Killmonger saved Tony Stark.
Oh, yeah.
That was the last time we saw that character. Then on the comic side, Anton Igorovich Vanko, Whiplash. Again, we just briefly talked about him in our Rhodey episode as well. But again, there's no real dynamic against them, with them in the comics so much. Whereas in the MCU version, his name changed to Ivan Vanko, portrayed by Mickey Rourke, first and last seen in Iron Man 2. And I think he had a small cameo in What If as well. But yeah, as far as the MCU goes, while both Whiplash and the Mandarin were both mixed up in like that whole scenario, like Pepper got mixed up in that game. Yeah. She still had more beef with Aldrich Killian more than anybody because like she had what was it? Didn't he try to romance her a little bit?
He did, yeah.
Yeah.
He did.
And so speaking of him, he, as if you can believe it, he had such a big part in Iron Man 3, right? Was it 3? 3.
Yes.
He had such a big part in that film, but if you can believe it, he only apparently had one appearance in the comics.
Oh my gosh.
One.
Wow.
Yeah, and so similar to the film, Aldrich developed Extremis with Maya, so that is consistent between the comics and the film. Theirs was more of a super soldier formula, whereas I think they kind of skirted around it in Iron Man 3.
Yeah.
But not 100% the same. And so yeah, he didn't play a huge part in the comics aside doing that. Nor was he even associated with Stark the way that it played out in the films. But Maya, what was her name? Maya Hansen, she actually did play quite a role in the comics. We're not going to talk about her because she and Pepper didn't really have that much to do. But yeah, you know, it's kind of interesting how that played out. So of course, Aldrich Killian, portrayed by Guy Pearce, first and last seen in 2013's Iron Man 3. 2013. It's been 10 years.
Oh my gosh.
Directed by Shane Black. And so, yeah, a blast from the past who took Extremis to new heights with his foundation, AIM, another favorite acronym, Advanced Idea Mechanics. That's another name we've heard bounced around.
Just dropped in there. Nothing crazy.
Loki, WandaVision.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so, it was interesting. So he was that nerd that wanted to tell Stark his ideas, and then
blew him off.
He got blown off. Then he comes back.
Typical arc villain arc.
Well, it's very similar to also speaking of Jamie Foxx. It's a lot like Electro too. He's kind of that nerdy, unbearable scientific type. And so he in the film he worked with Tony's ex Maya Hansen. And so in the comics, they're just, I don't know if they actually had a romantic relationship, but they were college friends, Tony and Maya. Whereas in the film, they were kind of like a one-nighter at New Year's Eve or whatever it was. And so she's portrayed by Rebecca Hall. And then Aldrich killed her cold. Just shot her, from what I remember. Cheese. And so I think he and Pepper had more of the three villains as far as Iron Man is concerned. I feel like they had the most intermingling, but she still hasn't had one direct villain, right? Aside, of course, Thanos, who gets an honorable mention for all the right reasons.
Oh yeah, he's a villain to everybody.
Yeah, exactly. And of course the emergence and homage to A-Force by proxy, which is never anything shy of awesome. And so when it comes to other versions and in other media, there have been around 8 animated versions of Pepper in Marvel pop culture, as well as 12 appearances in video games. I didn't even realize that.
Wow, that's a good amount.
That's a lot, yeah. And that's just in English. That's not including different, versions of her. But we're just going to concentrate on a single variant that stands out among them, especially with modern day fans. And that's the Pepper of Earth 32938, which is, of course, What If? And so, just quick recap. She was only featured in 2 episodes. More so in the What If Killmonger Rescued Tony Stark episode, where she's voiced by Beth Hoyt. And I think she died? She died in that one? Or was that the other Killmonger one? I don't remember which one he went crazy, but...
I know he killed rescued Tony Stark.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I forget.
Yeah, I forget. I haven't watched. But can you imagine? It's also been 2 years since we've seen What If.
That's, oh my gosh.
And it was supposed to be, because it was supposed to be this year.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and so it's going to be 3 years since we last saw the show before we get the new season. But yeah, so that's the most modern version of the character we've seen, but it's still a variant. So, doesn't count, but counts, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I don't think we even need to discuss it, but the future of the character in the MCU, she ain't coming back.
No.
She gone.
She doesn't need to.
She gone. She does.
She doesn't need to.
Yeah,
if
I
she
agree.
doesn't further the story,
Yeah.
why would she?
Not even a
show up?
cameo, you don't think?
I mean, sure, a cameo, but why would Gwyneth Paltrow waste her time? I
She
know
doesn't even remember.
It's a half a day's work, 100%, but it's also like
She doesn't even remember which movies she's in. So.
exactly. Who is she going to motivate?
Riri.
I mean, there's more. There's probably someone that can motivate her.
I mean, she already got Shuri a bit.
Sherry, Rhodey can motivate her. I mean, not now. Until we get the real one back.
I know. Dang, man. Yeah, I don't know. She would. Let me gather my thought for a second. She would be the most logical, but I also think she is the least likely because it's Gwyneth Paltrow.
Yes.
But
Yes.
that would be the only instance that I would expect to see her.
I don't think she has enough motive to someone. The only person I think personally, like not even being an Iron Man or whatever.
Yeah.
I think she would have more I feel like she would have more motivational power to Peter Parker than she
Interesting.
would to
Yeah.
Riri or
That
something.
makes sense. Sure. Yeah. I could see that. Yeah. Especially this version because like Riri idolized Tony in a way, but
I don't even know if he
Not
I realize Tony,
necessarily.
not that, but his tech.
his tech. Yeah,
You know what I
exactly.
mean?
That's exactly right. And then Peter is more of the person.
Like
yeah.
they've shared the screen together.
Sure.
You know, and like
yeah. There's no actual personal connection.
yes,
Yeah, I could
So.
see that for sure. Yeah, so I
she's dead.
salute to her. It's like Gamora all over again. Yeah, she ain't coming back. So yeah, she has definitely set sail. Almost was. So funny enough, Rachel McAdams was
Wife.
Jon Favreau's first choice to play Pepper Potts.
I don't
Can
blame
you
him.
imagine?
Don't blame him.
Instead of Gwyneth Paltrow putting Rachel McAdams in all those scenarios, and then somebody else is Christine
That
Palmer.
I do actually see though.
Yeah.
Out of all the almost was's,
Sure.
there's sometimes where you're like, I don't know about that one.
Yeah.
But I can see
100%.
see Rachel
Yeah.
McAdams there. But
Yeah.
I also can't see anyone else doing Christine.
Yeah, exactly.
Now it's like, well, now I don't know.
The dynamic is there. And so she initially turned down the role when she was first, offered it. But of course, she did pretty well considering she did come back as Christine.
It's okay. She's loved in every universe.
Yeah,
it's fine now.
I see what you did there. In Doctor Strange, but of course, we've discussed this before. We don't think we'll see her again either. At least, maybe a cameo in Doctor Strange 3, but
Nah,
But
I
yeah,
think that ship is passed.
yeah, I think she's also passed because she's married and all that good stuff.
I just think, yeah, like when
She
you have
served
a
her
line
time.
that's like, I will love you in every universe.
Yeah.
You got it. You can't just, 'cause
Yeah.
then if
There's
you,
no topping it.
if you bring them back, it's like, okay, well, what does that line freaking mean?
Yeah, exactly. It becomes a throwaway. Yeah. So Rachel McAdams, that would have been
crazy.
interesting. But yeah, it's they're both fantastic actresses, and it's great that we had them both in the MCU. Suggested readings. So this was kind of tough because it's kind of like, well, there's only so much of this character, but I will suggest both 2010 and 2020's solo titles for Rescue. The older version released by Powerhouse Kelly Sue DeConnick as well as Andrea Moody. And then the second, more recent one from Dana Schwartz, Jason Burrows, Scott Hanna, and Pete Puntaz. Oh, I'm so sorry. Pantazis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pentazis?
Pantazis.
No, don't listen to me.
It's yeah. The first series is only a one shot. It's a pretty quick read, but you get a really great vibe of Rescue and her purpose. And then the 2021, yeah, it follows. It's kind of heartbreaking because it does feature a ghost of Happy. It's 2 issues long, but again, it really carves out the Pepper Potts that is the more modern day version. Then, of course, 2014's Superior Iron Man from Tom Taylor, Yildiray Sinar, and Guru EFX. And, last but not least, honorable mentions for not only the classic Iron Man issues, especially Tales of Suspense, but Iron Man Volume 5. And so that's kind of where we see more of the Pepper and Tony that a lot more people may be familiar with as far as the dynamic goes. But yeah, some reads for you guys. And that's it. That's the end of the show.
Oh my gosh, Pepper Potts.
Pepper Potts. So thanks for listening, guys. Next episode. So yeah, as we mentioned with Secret Invasion, the finale is right around the corner. So we're going to focus and fully discuss that series in our next mini Marvel, as well as any post-STCC Marvel-related news that pops up.
Woo!
We are Groot salute to Joe, Liz, Ashley, Andrew, Eve, Laura, Andrea, Robin, Ed, Katie, Melanie, Nats, Jenny, Ariel, Claire, Sherry, and the Arachnerd. Follow us on social at STRKCNTRST. And if you like what you hear, review, rate, and subscribe.
Nice.
Yeah.
Once again, thanks for listening, y'all. We will catch you in the next one.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Tony, look at me. We're going to be okay. You can rest now.